Okay, we are back to talk about Penelope. New season just premiered this week on Netflix. We are looking at season one, episodes one through four, just simply titled one, two, three, and four. As Cameron mentioned, this is from Mark Duplass and Mel Eslin. Seeking to take a break from the always connected and online world, 16-year-old Penelope leaves her family and friends during a trip to venture out into nature, try to rediscover herself, and learn more about what her purpose may be. Along the way, during the first half of this season, she learns some survival skills, befriends a bear, makes deep connection with a tree conservationist, and learns just generally how to be self-sufficient in the wilderness as she thinks more about who it is that she wants to be and what it is that she should do. Very interesting, unique show for a lot of
Yeah.
reasons. And curious to talk about this with you, but I'll just sort of start with this. We don't see many other people besides this 16-year-old girl in this show. So who do you think this show is meant for? Is this for teens? Is this for adults? Or what's the sense of who you think this was created for?
It is yeah, it's interesting because it definitely has a kind of young adult feel, YA feel to it. Um Certain elements of it remind me of reading. Did you read that book as a kid called like Hatchet? The Hatchet?
Yep. Yep.
I can't remember who wrote that off the top of my head. I didn't make a note of it. But it definitely has something of that feel to it. And I think one thing that we'll talk about here, but we should perhaps get out of the way, as it were, is how we're reacting to it from our perspective as 40 somethings or whatever, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I certainly tried in watching it to get myself towards the point of view that Penelope has, like why is she doing this? What's going on? How it's an adventure? What are the motivations behind it? And we have to speculate a little bit and read into that a little bit. Um, so I don't know. I mean, in terms of the question as you phrased it, I'm going to say, why not both, right? Like, I don't see any
Yeah.
reason that teens couldn't watch the show, but I also don't see any reason why adults can't enjoy it.
Yeah, I found myself thinking the same thing that while I think the brief pieces of information we have as to why she's doing what she's doing, those are certainly inherent to teenagers. They are not exclusive to teenagers, right? That
Hmm.
I feel myself just being caught up in a world that is something I don't want to be a part of anymore, something that it just feels like I'm on a treadmill in many ways. I want to just break free from that and go figure out, really what am I supposed to do and who am I supposed to be? So while it may be a 16-year-old girl, it's still things that middle-aged adults can relate to, and it certainly is middle-aged adults that wrote this thing. So there's some themes there as well.
Yeah. And in terms of the pacing and the style and all of this, right? You asked who's it for? I'd actually be really curious. Is it for teens? Would they be patient enough to watch it?
Yeah.
Maybe though, right? Maybe there's something about the desire that's being, expressed here and portrayed that young people would connect to.
Yeah.
And I simply don't know on that front. I'd have to talk to a youth who watched the show. But I
Yeah.
mean, you can hardly imagine anything more different than the TikToks, right? It's like a constant simulation of short videos. Here it's like long shots of the woods with um a minimalistic music. I did really enjoy the music. I think it plays a
Yes,
big role
I,
in this as
I did
well.
too.
I want to mention
I,
that.
I thought exactly the same thing as you're saying is, there's literal tree hugging in this show. There is,
Yeah.
I mean, just moments where, yes, it is the opposite of fast paced and quick views and move from one thing to the next. It is lingering on shots and ideas and um, struggling to learn something and watching her do it over and over and over and over again. And it's like, yeah, so your normal teenager might or might not find that appealing. And maybe that's part of the point. Why aren't we slowing down and thinking about these things?
I mean, I think it is part of the point to the extent that I myself, in watching this, kept thinking, why don't you just give up and go home? Why don't you go back to civilization? Why are you, you know, but she keeps persevering in doing things like figuring out how to boil water and building her tent and has a kind of commitment to what she's up to and a certain certain kind of fearlessness and belief in herself to be able to do this.
Yeah.
That is, I don't know what the right word is, but it's appealing. I mean, there's something I enjoy about that.
Yeah, it does again have a sense of, man, if only, if only I could find myself in a position where I could do this or not focus on anything else other than learn how to build a tent for a couple of days. It's just sort of this, I, I I don't know that it's necessarily aspirational, but it is, man, to have that be the only thing that you care about, type of situation. It just almost seems foreign to almost anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is sometimes to say a fantasy about just kind of disappearing, you know,
Hmm.
just disconnecting, disappearing, uninscribing oneself from this complex social reality, getting away from the internet and the smartphone. And at first she's using her phone, and it was
Yeah.
striking to me at one point where she like turns her phone back on and like is shocked by it. She's like, no.
I was going to ask you about that. Like,
Uh,
was that oh my gosh, it actually turned on? No, I don't want anything to do with that.
yeah, like actually I don't want anything to do with that. Now, of course, one thing that's at play here that we need to talk about, and there's no avoiding it, is what she's doing to her parents.
Okay, so as someone who has a 16-year-old daughter, let me speak to this for just a minute.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, if I am her parents, I mean, we don't have a sense these first four episodes of what they're doing or how they are trying to find her, but I cannot imagine a more fearful, harrowing, stressful situation than what she has done to them, right?
Hmm.
She has left them a note saying, I'm going off by myself in a place they don't know, in a place they don't understand. And I presume they're looking for her, but in her quest to find herself, I just, as a parent, she's made a very selfish decision here, to put
Yeah.
her family through this.
Well, and I found myself thinking that as someone who, I don't have a child,
Right, right.
but nevertheless found myself feeling like, oh my God, really?
Yeah, I
You're just
mean,
gonna take off, and exchange a few text messages and then like hop on a train and voice record a message and send it, and then presumably turn off the phone and not
turn off
use it again.
location services, turn off everything.
Um,
I mean, you are simply in a place where you cannot be found at that point. And like I said, I just, some real maybe imbued trauma on feeling trying to be empathetic about what the parents would have been going through here. It just, yeah, it just made me cringe of what they're having to go through as they, thinking about that aspect of it as Penelope goes on this journey.
yeah, that's tough because presumably they're freaking out
Exactly.
constantly
Yeah.
and fairly, you know. So I found it a little bit of the struggle on that front. I'm curious to see what ultimately happens, right? Because you could well imagine a sort of standard way of ending the story would be that she goes home at the end of the
Mhm.
season. Um, I wonder if that is what we're going to get or if not, right?
Yeah.
I think the door's
Yeah.
open to the possibility that it's not. But so, yeah, I was feeling that too. Um, and it almost felt like resistance to the show in a certain way. So I really tried to overcome that and as much as I could take up her perspective and follow that as we move forward. But yeah, man, um, I don't even know.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Uh,
one thing to leave your parents a voicemail that says, I'm going to go stay at a friend's for a week. I don't, I need to just get away. It's another to literally disappear. So we don't need to keep going on this, but yeah, it's not,
yeah,
not the same.
and she said, "Don't look for me," and all
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
I mean, also she's 16. You know, if you were 19 or something, even you'd probably freak out. You'd still probably
Yeah,
freak out, but you'd be have to say, well, she's an adult or whatever. She's not an adult.
definitely.
Um, goes and sleeps in some guy's van. I mean, he seems cool
Now,
though.
I mean,
That guy seemed
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, he seemed great, and I'm glad that we did not go down a different story than it could have there. But uh, did the parents not teach the daughter to not go into strange people's vans? I mean, anyway, we don't have to go down this road anymore. I'm
It
just
is really striking to me, and I don't think unrealistic how everyone she encounters is really, really nice and
yeah,
kind,
yeah,
right? And got me thinking about the kindness of strangers. There's a kind of poignant scene in maybe it's episode 2 when she encounters the other campers and
mhm.
she's lost her water bottle, so they give her a water bottle, and we don't even really hear them talking so much. We just kind
Yeah.
of
There's
the
there's no dialogue there. I noticed that.
I think there is, but you can't quite hear it.
Yeah,
It's like they have the dialogue, but they put it down in the mix below the music. Um, Really interesting style and definitely reminiscent in various ways of um, the stuff that Duplass Brothers have previously done, in terms of they call mumblecore. You ever get into
yeah,
mumblecore? I don't know if this is quite mumblecore, but it feels
yeah.
somewhat close stylistically.
I did find myself particularly bookended by the conversation with Sam, I think, in the van, and then I can't remember the lady's name who's staying up in the tree. Just
Helena.
interesting, yeah, yeah, Helena. Interesting, powerful conversations. Wish that there had been more of what kind of conversation did you get between that couple and Penelope. Found myself wanting some of that. Maybe it's just I don't know. Maybe the lack of dialogue is making me slightly uncomfortable or wanting, sort of fill in some of those holes. Has that been something that's distracted you at all? Because there's not much dialogue in the show, as you can imagine, teenager being out on their own, other than sort of some self-reflection that she's talking to herself.
Yeah, she talks to the tree.
Yeah.
You know, she talks to the bear. And
The
we'll
bear.
talk about the bear more here in a moment. There is a tension that runs through things. Um, Certainly there I felt a tension with regard to the bear.
Yeah.
Even the cute bear cub, like that's still a bear.
Yeah, that's right.
You
It
know,
will grow up.
yeah. Um, and I don't know though. I didn't really in the scene we were talking about where she runs into the other campers. I thought it worked. It was effective, and almost like we didn't need to actually really be hearing their conversation. We kind of knew what their conversation was, even
Yeah.
though we didn't hear it. And these people were helping her out.
Yeah. They're teaching her
Um,
things. Yeah.
yeah, and he gives her a flint and all of that kind of stuff. Um, at the same time, part of the tension is that the level of he just continually thinking, well, why are you doing this, right? I mean, like even though she's encountered nice people and she seems to pretty much be doing okay, and she's in a park where in theory there's a ranger not too far away or whatever, she still puts herself at significant risk
Yeah.
doing all of this.
Yeah. In a park that she's in illegally, by the way, but just
Yeah,
chalk that up to being 16.
and I mean, like, what? Like that's the least of your worries here. What you're gonna get a ticket or something?
Yeah.
You get caught for illegal camping and get fined or something. I mean, I think that from Penelope's perspective, the big negative there would that be that she got kicked out and they would search down her parents and her adventure would be over, right? Not
Exactly.
that it's a
Yeah.
now she'd have to pay a fine or whatever.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the bear.
Yeah.
So first, just a little curiosity on my point. In the episode with the bear, I guess it's really just one episode with
Hmm.
the bear. At the end it says introducing Cinder the bear.
Yes.
So of course, me being me, I immediately went to Google and typed in Cinder the bear.
Yeah.
And what I found was a bear named Cinder who was rescued from a wildfire and became something of an icon. I mean, someone wrote a children's book and various things, but then also reports that some hunter killed this bear
Yeah.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on here.
I think it was just reference or a giving some. I don't know. They just know the story. I don't know if we are we set in Washington State, which is where the Cinder the Bear came from. I think we're
I
near
believe
there.
so. I
So
believe so. I think we are in Washington State.
yeah, so I think it may just be a nod to that bear or to its story, and maybe just drawing light to the idea that this was sort of became this icon and had all these things done for it and written about it, and then some hunter just went off and killed it apparently.
Yeah, so but perhaps that is it's an illusion
Yeah,
to the previous bear because it couldn't be Cinder the bear actually in the show, I
right.
guess, since a hunter killed Cinder. So yeah, maybe this was the idea to get us to look it up and make us a bit sad.
Yeah, yeah.
And and then you could draw a parallel in certain ways between that and the cutting down of the tree at the end of episode 4, which I
Hmm.
want to talk about more. Um, you put internets that everything seems real, and yeah, I think that's true. I think that is a real bear. I'm not sure about the mama bear. That one might have been
Yeah, it very
special
well
effects.
may have been. It just seemed like she was. And again, I'm sure I could be fooled these days with how advanced the technology is, but it seems like she is starting fires, interacting with a real small bear. I mean, just really doing some of this work, which extremely impressive for a young actress.
Yeah, yeah, and that would be. I mean, that would be entirely in line, I think, with the style of what the Duplass brothers are doing here. So I do think that all of that is real. No, I'm now imagining the filming where they're like, "All right, keep trying to make a fire till it works.
Yeah, that's
Got the
right.
camera." Um, but it's in line with this low budget, kind of minimalistic thing. Um, and I do believe that the bear cub is a real bear,
Yeah,
but I'm not sure about the big bear that destroys their campsite that we only get a quick shot of.
that would be very dangerous. Yes.
I don't know that they brought in a real bear. I mean, I suppose you could. I suppose there
Yeah.
are bears out there you could use. But yeah, so let's talk about the whole thing when after the bear destroys her campsite, she decides she's going to go to town to buy more supplies. She's planning to come back.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But she runs into Helena up in the tree, and we see the helicopter. Penelope sees a helicopter, and
Hmm.
ultimately learn, okay, what's going on here is a helicopter's coming around to give Helena a warning. They're going to cut down that tree and other trees or whatever. And so we learn that she has been um, this kind of literal tree hugger for decades, right? One of these people who will go and um, be in the tree so you can't cut it down.
Exactly. Yep.
And we get some good conversation, I think, between her and Penelope that I want to talk about.
Yeah, it's almost like this is the reason why Penelope went on this journey, this time of self-reflection to find someone like this who it's one of the more interesting aspects of the conversation to me was her saying that used to be a whole bunch of them. Now it's, no one really does anymore. It's just her, but it's something she's so committed to and so focused on and so devoted to that she's still at her advanced age is pursuing this and making sure that it's something that is remains important to her. Gave her purpose in many ways, which is what I think Penelope is looking for, and and so I don't know what will then happen or if this character will show up again in the next 4 episodes, but it seemed like. Oh, did you find what you were looking for here halfway through, or part of what you were looking for? Just thought it was a relevant conversation to what it seemed like some of the themes were.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely hitting the themes. And what are those? Um, we had some conversation about so why is Helena doing this? Protecting the trees, okay. Penelope, of course, connects to that. We've already seen her literally hug a previous tree, ask that previous tree for protection,
Yeah,
and so on. Big, beautiful trees and all of that, right? But at the same time, Penelope's interested in kind of interrogating the details. Why do they want to cut down these trees? Well, they say the trees are sick,
hmm
and could make other trees sick. And you get that conversation about the communication between trees. And really, Helena has this kind of review of the world that I don't know if it holds up to pressure, like
Yeah.
scientifically speaking. And maybe the trees are sick, and and then so on. And I think Penelope equally is a bit unsure, but she's really kind of intrigued by the structure of Helena's commitment, I think, more than its content, if that makes sense. That was how it struck me, at least.
Yeah, I actually really thought it was a I thought the idea, the metaphor used about the tree being sick was quite adept for what exactly I believe they're trying to do with this show. So if you think about the idea of Penelope eventually someday is going to be a part of a community again. And essentially what Helena's talked about is a community of trees. When you have a community and one person or a couple people in that are sick or are broken or are a certain way, will that then impact the community to make them that way? Or can the community come in and heal that person or that
Mhm.
tree or that whatever it is? And I think that what Helena's trying to say is that um, no matter which side of it you're on, there is hope if you're broken, and there is a purpose for you if you're a part of that community and are involved with someone who is sick or broken or suffering. I just thought it was a good metaphor for sort of how it seems like. Again, we know very little of Penelope before this journey, but certainly what she's going to go back and see when she gets back.
Yeah, well, I like that. How do you view the uh, kind of taint on the community or whatever, right? There's a sickness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is it a kind of, do we take the approach of fearing that that's going to spread and contaminate everyone and we need to cut it out and kill it, as opposed to Helena's view, which is that the community coming together will take care of and help
Yes.
the tree that needs help. I don't really know if that's true
Yeah, well,
with regard to
I
trees.
like the way you phrase it. Don't know if put under pressure if that's what happens or not.
Yeah, but if you take it in relation to human beings, well, there I might be tempted to say it could go either way,
Yeah,
you know. And then part of what the show is doing is hopefully getting us to ask ourselves that question about um, how we view ourselves in relation to others,
exactly.
and how we view perhaps those negative elements, whatever your point of view is, whatever's coming to mind is still whether do we, try to excise the sickness and kill
Yeah,
it or something, or is there a way to come together and heal or something like
yeah.
that?
I mean, that's exactly the way that I read it. That being a part of something, of some group, of some community, if your first reaction is just to get rid of the thing that's causing, especially if it's a member of that community that's causing pain or struggle or stress, that's not the purpose of being in a community. Just like if you're just going to chop down a tree at the first sign of it being sick, yeah, that's clearly how I read it as well.
Yeah, and then when they're talking about why Penelope is doing what she's doing,
Hmm.
she says something about feeling broken or feeling like she'll never be whole or something like that. Um, at risk of getting too into the weeds, this definitely got me thinking of romanticism with a capital R, like a tradition of thought and so on, the way of the romantics, but
Yeah,
also seeking a kind of wholeness through nature, and so on. But then it also got me thinking, being who I am, that yeah, you don't get that.
yeah. No, I
I
don't think
mean,
so.
I don't know if it's the human condition or if it's the modern human condition. That's maybe an interesting question. But that the kind of sense of wholeness that she's talking about is just not going to be available, and it's rather a matter of learning to live with the fact that you don't have that or something like this.
Yeah, and it's at that point that I thought, I wish we had 1 or 2 minutes of some story of Penelope before she leaves on this journey. I mean, she's just at a
Yeah.
party of some kind or at some sort of multifamily trip or something, and then just wakes up one morning and leaves. And so I wish we had a little something of what it is, but I guess I can empathize again, knowing struggles of a 16-year-old teenage girl.
She's at what is a very weird event, which seems to be one where everyone is wearing headphones, listening to their own music and dancing, quote unquote, together.
Yes.
If you attend to that scene, it's
Yes.
very weird. And I don't know if people do this, but it did take me to symbolize how there's a disconnection, between the individuals at that dance party. We're not even all dancing to the same music.
Yeah.
Um, I think that functions as a certain symbol. And then she sees the wolf and the sort of call of the wild sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I definitely think it makes sense that this is what she's after in terms of communing with nature and, perhaps that sense of a kind of metaphysical fullness of being whole. But yeah, I don't think you can get that, right?
Yeah.
So I think the story
And I
ultimately
got
has
from
to be about
the
how she doesn't get it.
yeah, and from the brief glimpse of what she's at, the sense of yeah, you're at some sort of group gathering, but it's all very individualistic to where you're maybe you're listening to the same things but you've got headphones on and you can't interact and you can't, you're experiencing the same thing, but there's no connection there between people.
Yeah, I thought it was an odd scene. And again, I don't know if people do that or not, really. Maybe they do, but it definitely, that's how I read it, kind of symbolically. Clearly, she has a connection with Lana. The other thing I want to talk about here, and I think you did too, in terms of our notes, is this inherited trauma idea. And I felt like there was a real parallel between Helena tells this story about her mother and the dead dog in the parking lot, and how her mother breaks down just wailing
Yes.
at the sight of the dead dog in the parking lot. And then the loggers come back and they actually cut down the tree,
Yeah.
and Helena's wailing. And I don't know, I connected those things personally. Did you?
Yeah. I was trying to think more about my first thought when that started coming up was we didn't have pets or anything growing up. I never saw other than with sort of immediate family member that level um of what she's describing. So not exactly, but more so a sense of um from a familial perspective, we would do anything for each other, but I don't know that I ever witnessed to that level what she's talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I have either. And then the story I think is interesting. It's not their dog, it's just some random dog,
Right, exactly.
right? Um, but when they're going into the store, the dog's just kind of, around. And when they come out, someone's accidentally run over the dog. And Helena seems to be suggesting that, something about that triggers in her mother a
Yeah,
deep pain, a trauma that perhaps cuts back generations that even she doesn't understand, right?
yeah,
Because that's part of her point in talking about this, that we are
yeah.
marked by the traumas of our ancestors in ways that connect us to them, but
Hmm.
also that this structure would mean that it's not fully conscious, right? Like, and can't be. I don't really understand why I'm feeling this kind of pain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure that I necessarily agree or even understand the idea that that type of sort of trauma or empathy or reflection can be passed down. Certainly, it's, not from a hereditary sense, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I just
I
didn't.
don't know if
I
that holds up to
didn't.
pressure either, if that's what you're
Yeah,
saying.
exactly.
But it's interesting idea, and at very least, I think it provides a way of thinking about how it is that something can so deeply affect you in a way that maybe doesn't make rational sense, right? Like, why would you be so upset about that dead dog?
Yeah, yeah.
What is that triggering, as a
Hmm.
symbol that, because it's clearly kind of not directly about that dog who's just
Right.
not even your dog.
Yeah.
Um,
That dog is a representation of some other kind of trauma or buildup of things that just get to that breaking point there in that situation.
yeah, and maybe another way we could take this in terms of the parallel or the resonance I felt with the felling of the tree and Helena wheeling, is a feeling about this shift in society or humanity, or how is it that you could be so careless and reckless to run over a dog in the parking lot and then drive away, presumably.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
here, Helena is expressing this confidence to Penelope that they won't cut down the trees if we're here. Don't worry about it. They're not going to cut down the trees if we're
Yeah.
here. And then they do. They do it
Yeah.
anyway. Um, it's now just her camping out in the tree instead of a whole group like it used to
Yeah.
be decades ago. But so, like, okay, maybe if there were more people, then it would still be effective. I don't know. Maybe the um, engines of late capitalism keep pushing forward to where now we don't even care that some
Yeah.
activist is trying to protect the tree. We're gonna we're gonna cut trees down anyway. Like, okay, man, we're not gonna cut this tree down when she's up in the tree,
Yeah.
perhaps, but not going to kill people potentially, yeah,
Yeah.
but also just going to kind of harshly do it with the confidence that in the grand scheme of things, people aren't going to notice,
Yeah. People aren't going to notice.
Um,
We're convinced that we're right. The minority opinion of one or two doesn't mean as much or matter as much as when more people say it, believe it, are part of it. Yeah, we'll just do what we want because we're convinced that we're right. I think that she sort of senses that. Both of them sense that by the end.
yeah, and I think that's part of the reaction, right? I think is not just that they cut down the tree, which Helene is upset about, but the fact that they would cut down the tree, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes.
Um, Even though she's there as she has been fighting this fight,
Yeah,
um, that they do it anyway.
yeah.
Then there's this violent. I don't know. It was very effective to me.
It really is,
It's
and it was a good, it was a very interesting place to sort of draw the halfway mark, right? And for us
yeah,
to stop there and say, "Oh, okay, we don't know what's going to happen in the last four. I've not watched ahead. I don't know if this is something where she's going to get out, needs to get out, is going to return back, changed. We don't know, but certainly the experiences that she's having would lead her or lead us to believe that she's starting to find the things that she was looking for, and then as she changed when she comes out of the force on the other, metaphorically on the other side.
yeah, yeah. I'm really curious about it. So we're gonna watch the rest of the series and talk about, or the rest of the season. This is a related question, I guess, right? So, what's going to happen over these next 4 episodes? To what extent is this the complete story?
Mm,
Because some of the things I read, we're talking about how they independently produced this show. They kept ownership of the show, made a distribution deal with Netflix.
yeah,
I believe have been working out some other distribution globally. And I don't have the details about that. But when it comes down to it, like, Netflix can't cancel this show, really. Like,
right,
if they want to make more of this, Netflix could decline to
yeah,
distribute further
right,
seasons.
right,
Um, but if they decided to make more, they could. They retain ownership of it in that way. Having read some of that, I just don't know how much to read into it. Is there really an implication here that they potentially want to make a season two? And I
yeah.
don't know.
It's a good question. I don't know how to in this model that they seemingly have innovatively created. I don't know how that'll pursue.
Yeah. I don't know what it would be either. And that's the
Yeah,
thing too. I'm into this kind of quiet, minimalistic
yeah,
vibe. Or I really did start, sort of vibing with this show in terms of just how it felt to be watching it.
yeah. I did too.
But not a lot happens per
Right.
se, right? Um, it's hard to kind of even trace what is the plot,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know,
Exactly.
other than 16-year-old girl goes off into the woods. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, at one point, she says to the bear, well, I guess we can call Cinder,
Hmm.
we'll make it together to winter.
Yeah.
So is her
Cool.
plan to stay in the woods until winter, but then at that point recognize I'm going to have to go back to civilization because I can't
Exactly.
camp through the winter, or what? I mean, it's kind of interesting that we spend all of our time with her and yet um, still don't exactly know what she's thinking, other than when she decides to
That's do
talk to
something. Yeah.
herself or talk to a tree or talk to a bear.
Yeah. There's a very good review on Variety about this show that basically in summary says it's excellent except for the fact that it's not sure what it wants to do or what, who it wants to be.
Hmm.
So we'll see if that we find that true towards the end, but sort of what you're speaking to there.
Interesting. Yeah. I'll try to remember to go and read that after I've watched
After.
the next four
Yeah.
episodes, but before we record next week. And maybe we can tie it in then and see how we feel about what they were saying. But yeah, I think this has been good. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up here?
I think that's it for me.
All right, sounds good. So we'll be back next week talking about the second half of Penelope. Those would be episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yes.
And we hope you all will join us. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave a good rating review wherever you're listening to podcasts or however that works. I don't know. If you're on YouTube, give a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Appreciate it. You can follow TV Obsessive on social media if you want to, on X, on Facebook, on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram. Uh, Technically, there's a Mastodon account, I suppose, if you use Mastodon. Um, I post things. Will post to Mastodon, but yeah, because you're using like buffer, right? You
Yeah.
just post it to multiple
Post
places, so
all.
things
Yeah.
show up on Mastodon. But anyhow, um, check out tvobsessive.com, read articles and things like that, and we'll see you next week.
All right. See you then.